There are mornings when you wake up and feel like you are skating on thin ice, gliding through each moment with the fear that if you stop trying, even for just a second, everything will fall apart. You silently drink your coffee, glance at the clock, and dive back into a never-ending cycle, as if the world will leave you behind the moment you pause. But strangely, the tighter you grip things, the more easily they slip away. Have you ever felt like that? The more you strive for control, the more exhausted you become. The more you force yourself to be perfect, the more you lose yourself. The harder you try to appear strong, the weaker you actually feel. We live in a time where doing more is seen as being more. We praise busyness as if it were a badge of honor, equating exhaustion with success and burnout with ambition. We say things like, "I will rest when I am done. I will slow down when I achieve this. I will breathe when I am safe." But the truth is, safety never arrives when we are at war with ourselves. There is no peace in a life built entirely on performance. There is no joy in a soul constantly on the run. When we talk about self-mastery, we often think of self-discipline, of holding on tighter, trying harder, never stopping. But the Stoics teach us the opposite. That mastery begins with understanding what is not yours to carry. That the real power is not in pushing forward without rest, but in pausing long enough to ask, why am I carrying this in the first place? What if letting go is not giving up? What if slowing down is not laziness? What if choosing rest is not weakness, but wisdom? There was a man who spent years chasing success. He achieved everything: fame, fortune, recognition. But one morning he sat alone in his apartment and realized he no longer knew the sound of his own breath. He had spent so long being someone for everyone else that he had forgotten how to be himself. So he started again, not with a new job or a new goal, but with a question: what is still mine when the world is silent? That question is the beginning of every healing, of every awakening, of every return to what is real. So if today you feel tired, but you do not know why, if you are overwhelmed, but nothing seems to be wrong, if you are carrying everything but still feel empty, maybe you do not need more effort. Maybe you need more presence. Not everything needs to be held. Not every answer needs to be forced. Sometimes self-mastery is not about pushing forward. It is about gently stepping back, so you can see again, so you can hear again, so you can feel again. And maybe then you will remember, you were never here to force everything into place. You were here to live, fully, honestly, lightly. There is something I want you to truly consider right now. If everything you are holding on to so tightly, the expectations, the roles, the emotions, all the things you feel you must control in order to be loved, accepted, or safe. If all of those things were never yours to hold in the first place, what then? What if the reason you are so tired is not because you are weak, but because you are carrying what was never meant to be yours? What if self-mastery does not begin with gaining more control, but with surrendering what no longer aligns with who you are becoming? Many people confuse mastery with perfection. But mastery is not about never falling. It is about knowing when to let go and what to hold. It is about recognizing the voice of your soul amidst the noise. It is about realizing that the things you release do not diminish you. They make space for what matters. A woman once told me, "I spent years trying to be everything for everyone. I became 1,000 versions of myself just to keep the peace, to be enough, to not be left behind." One day, I looked in the mirror and did not recognize who I had become. That was the day I chose to begin again. And that new beginning was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet. It was gentle. It was the simple act of saying, I no longer abandon myself to be accepted. Maybe you need that moment too. A décision, a whispered turning point, a choice to stop performing and start returning. Returning to what? To yourself, to truth, to the breath that does not need to be earned, to the presence that does not need to be proven. You are not here to carry every burden. You are not here to fix every broken thing. You are not here to hold everything together while falling apart inside. You are here to choose what aligns with your soul. You are here to hold what still feels like peace when no one is watching. You are here to release what no longer resonates, not with bitterness, but with reverence. That is what mastery looks like. Not rigid control, but sacred discernment. Not pushing harder, but pausing deeper. So today, I want to ask you something simple. Are you ready to let go of the version of yourself that only exists to be enough? Are you ready to come home? If you are, I invite you to make a quiet declaration. Just leave a small sign. You can write, "I am ready," or simply leave a 1. Not for me, but for yourself. To mark the moment when you dared to choose differently, to choose presence, to choose return, to remind yourself that you were here, that you heard something true, and that you stayed. Because self-mastery does not begin with action. It begins with awareness. And sometimes, that awareness only arrives when you pause, observe, and accept that you do not have to hold everything to still be whole. There is a strange truth about life that becomes clearer the older you get. It is that what happens to you is often less important than how you respond to it. You can live a life full of chaos, failure, and loss, but if you know how to hold stillness in your heart, you can still be free. People often say you should not let others control your emotions, but they rarely teach you how. They rarely tell you that mastering your reactions is not about suppressing your feelings. It is about slowing them down long enough for wisdom to enter. It is about creating a space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, everything can change. Imagine someone criticizes you unfairly. Your instinct might be to defend yourself, to argue, to prove them wrong. But what if, instead of reacting, you paused? What if you took a breath and asked yourself, does this speak to who I really am? Does this require my energy, or is silence more powerful here? That is the practice. Not reacting just because you are provoked, not speaking just because you are hurt, but choosing your response in a way that honors the person you are becoming. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He did not mean you should become cold or emotionless. He meant that the deepest strength is born in restraint, in clarity, in choosing not to be dragged away from your peace by every wave that crashes in your direction. It takes strength to pause. It takes courage to not retaliate. It takes wisdom to say, "I will not let this shape me." And if no one has ever told you, let me say it now. You are allowed to slow down before you react. You are allowed to choose stillness over chaos. You are allowed to respond with grace, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Sometimes, your greatest act of self-mastery is choosing not to attend every argument you are invited to. Sometimes, it is quietly walking away from the noise that tries to claim your peace. And sometimes, it is saying nothing at all, letting silence speak on your behalf. That is not weakness. That is power. And if you are listening, and if something in you knows this is true, I want you to remember one thing. Your reaction is never your fate. Your reaction is your choice. And you deserve the freedom of choosing again. Not to be perfect, just to be present. People often think of discipline as punishment, as restriction, as a set of rules meant to limit your joy. But there is another way to see it. Discipline is not a cage. It is a path. It is a form of freedom born from devotion. The kind of freedom that comes when you decide who you are, and you return to that decision every single day, even when no one is watching. It is easy to act with integrity when someone is looking. It is easy to do the right thing when it will be praised. But who are you when no one is there to clap? Who are you in the quiet, when it is just you and the choice in front of you? That is where discipline lives. Not in loud declarations, but in the small, consistent actions that align you with your highest self. The early morning you wake up to pray, even when tired. The kind words you choose when you could have been sharp. The decision to put down your phone and be present with the person in front of you. Discipline is choosing what matters most over what feels good in the moment. And that is not always easy. Sometimes it feels like you are walking against the current. Sometimes it feels like you are missing out. But in truth, you are being refined, you are being strengthened, you are saying to yourself and to the world, I know what I stand for, and I will not abandon that, not even when it is inconvenient. Seneca once said, no man is free who is not master of himself. And this is what he meant, that true freedom is not doing whatever you want, whenever you want. True freedom is knowing what is worth wanting, and having the strength to say yes to that again and again, even when no one else sees the value in it but you. You will have days when you stumble, days when discipline feels heavy. Do not mistake those days for failure. They are part of the practice. What matters is not perfection. What matters is the return. Coming back to the choice that reflects who you truly are. Self-mastery does not come from controlling your life. It comes from choosing how you live it, moment by moment, choice by choice. And you are not here to drift through life reacting to every demand. You are here to live with intention, with clarity, with a quiet kind of strength that does not need permission to show up fully. Discipline is not a prison. It is a prayer, a steady rhythm that says, I remember who I am, and I will live like it. There is a kind of strength that the world often overlooks. It does not make noise. It does not seek the spotlight. It does not shout to be heard. This kind of strength lives in silence. In the moment when you no longer feel the need to react, to explain, or to prove, you simply become quiet and observe, not to endure, but to understand. We live in a world where people often confuse volume with value. The louder someone is, the more convincing they seem. But the truth is, what is said in stillness often carries more weight than what is screamed in chaos. A calm presence can quiet a room without saying a word. There is wisdom in restraint. There is depth in silence. Not the silence of fear or avoidance, but the silence of someone who has nothing to prove. Of someone who has learned that not every battle is worth fighting. That not every opinion deserves a response. That not every misunderstanding needs immediate correction. You see, silence is not the absence of power. It is often the fullness of it. When you are silent, you can hear more clearly. Not just the voices of others, but your own. The whisper of your soul. The gentle tug of your conscience. The small signals your heart gives when something feels right or wrong. In silence, you learn to respond instead of react. You learn to observe your thoughts without being ruled by them. You begin to recognize how much noise in your life comes not from others, but from within you. And once you see that, you start to reclaim your peace. Someone once asked, but if I stay silent, will they misunderstand me? And the answer is, maybe. But your purpose is not to be understood by everyone. Your purpose is to be at peace with yourself. And sometimes, peace requires silence. Sometimes, silence is the loudest form of self-respect. Imagine a conversation where things escalate, voices rise, tension builds. And then, instead of matching the volume, you breathe, you pause. You offer no defense, no retaliation, just presence. In that moment, you are not weak, you are free. You are showing that your sense of self is not dictated by others' emotions. Mastery is not about controlling every word you say. It is about knowing when silence speaks louder, when stillness carries truth, when your peace is worth more than being right. So next time you feel the urge to respond, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this kind? Is this aligned with who I want to be? And if the answer is no, let silence answer for you. Because within that silence, there is clarity, there is strength, and most of all, there is you. There is a truth that no school ever taught you. Every action you take, every decision you make, every small habit you keep, is silently building the person you are becoming. You do not need loud declarations. You do not need grand gestures. Each choice, no matter how small, is a quiet statement about who you are. You do not have to convince anyone. You do not have to shout your intentions. The way you treat the stranger on the street, the way you speak when no one is listening, the way you show up for your own soul in the quiet of morning, those are your declarations. You are writing your character not with your words, but with your patterns. You might think small choices do not matter, but they do. The decision to get out of bed when your body wants to stay, the moment you choose to listen instead of interrupt, the time you sit with your feelings instead of running from them. These things shape you, and they stay with you. The world may not notice, but you do, and you matter. Your soul remembers every time you chose truth over comfort, every time you were kind when you could have been cold, every time you said no, not to punish, but to protect. Self-mastery is not about being perfect. It is about being consistent with what you value. It is about knowing that you cannot control everything, but you can control your next move, and the next, and the next. And those moves, those small, quiet acts, they become your life. Someone once told me, I do not know who I am anymore. I feel lost. And I said, then start paying attention to your choices. They will remind you, because we are never truly lost. We just stopped listening to the voice that once guided us. We get distracted, overwhelmed, disconnected, but it is never too late to return. Start again with one choice, one simple decision that feels aligned. It does not have to be big, it just has to be real. Wake up 5 minutes earlier to breathe. Reach out to someone you love. Say no to something that drains you, or yes to something that fills you. You do not need a dramatic overhaul. You need quiet honesty, the kind that builds a life from the inside out. You do not need approval. You need integrity. Because integrity is not what you do when people are watching. It is what you choose when no one sees. And the most powerful kind of change comes from those private victories, the ones you celebrate in silence. So if you feel far from yourself right now, that is okay. You are not broken. You are just being called home, one choice at a time. And if you need a place to start, let it be here, let it be now. Let it be this decision to live a little more aligned, a little more honest, a little more free. Because your choices, even the smallest ones, are shaping a story far more beautiful than you realize. There is a very thin line between leaving because you want to grow and leaving just to escape. But thin does not mean invisible. Those who are calm inside usually know exactly where they are going and why. Those who live in panic only know they are running, unaware of what they are leaving behind or where they are going. Some people leave a job, a relationship, a path, and say they are chasing freedom. But if you look closely, they are just running away from discomfort, running away from the discipline it takes to grow, running away from themselves. There is a difference between walking away because something no longer aligns with your values and running because you cannot bear to face what it reveals about you. True growth begins not when you flee what is hard, but when you look it in the eye and ask, what is this trying to teach me? That is the heart of Stoicism. Not to numb your feelings, but to face them. Not to become cold, but to become clear. One day, you will sit in the quiet and realize that the real fear was never the challenge itself, but the silence after you stop running. The part where you meet yourself, stripped of distraction, without the noise of excuses, without the armor of performance. And that meeting, however uncomfortable, is holy. It is in that silence that transformation happens. It is where healing begins, not with noise, but with presence. So if you feel like running right now, pause. Ask yourself, am I escaping or am I evolving? The answer may not come immediately. It may arrive in the middle of the night, or during a quiet walk, or in the stillness after prayer, but it will come. And when it does, honor it. Because knowing why you walk is more important than where you walk to. You are not meant to run forever. You are meant to grow. You are meant to rise. And sometimes, that means being still enough to hear what the running was trying to drown out. There is something I believe with all my heart, that no one can truly walk far on the path of becoming without gratitude. Not the polite kind, not the kind you say out of habit, but the kind of gratitude that sinks into your bones, that shifts your vision, that begins to open your heart even before your circumstances change. Gratitude is not about denying hardship. It is about choosing where to focus in the midst of it. It is easy to give thanks when life feels full, when everything aligns. But the deeper gratitude, the kind that transforms, is born in the middle of the unknown, in the hallway between who you were and who you are becoming. When you begin to see beauty in the process itself, even when it is messy, that is the beginning of healing. There was a man who lost everything. His job, his home, his sense of identity. He spent months in bitterness, wondering why life had abandoned him. But one morning, he watched the sunrise through a cracked window in a borrowed room, and something inside him whispered, "I still have breath. I still have choice. I still have today." And that whisper changed everything. He did not suddenly get everything back, but he began to see differently. He began to live with his eyes open. And with that vision, he slowly built a life not from what he had lost, but from what he still carried: faith, humility, and gratitude. Acceptance does not mean agreeing with everything that happened. It means you stop fighting reality long enough to grow within it. It means saying, I may not like this, but I can learn from it. I may not have chosen this, but I can still choose who I become through it. That is the essence of grace. Not avoiding pain, but being able to hold it without letting it define you. When you start to accept, you loosen your grip on control. And when you do that, you free up energy to move forward, not from resistance, but from alignment. You begin to see that your story was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be real, meant to reflect the raw, unfiltered journey of a soul, learning to return to itself. And gratitude, even in small doses, brings you back. Be grateful for the breath you still have, for the mind that still questions, for the heart that still hopes, for the moments you did not think you would survive, but you did. Because gratitude gives you perspective. It softens your heart without making you weak. It grounds you in the now without stealing your hope for the future. And most of all, it reminds you that healing is not a finish line. It is a way of seeing, a way of being, a way of remembering that even in brokenness, beauty still lives. Have you ever wondered why we keep chasing something that never seems to arrive? As if happiness is a distant dot on the horizon, and every time we think we are close, it moves one step further. We think, when I get that job, I will be happy. When that relationship is perfect, I will feel whole. When I achieve that milestone, I will finally be at peace. But what if none of that is true? What if happiness has never been about what is next, but about how present you are with what already is? There are people who have everything the world says will make them happy. Money, status, admiration, and yet they cannot sleep at night. And there are others who live simply, quietly, without much recognition, but they walk with peace. Not because their life is easy, but because they have learned to see. To see what is still good, to see what is still theirs, to see what matters, even when it is small. The Stoics taught that happiness is not in external things, but in how we relate to them. That peace is not found in perfect outcomes, but in the attitude we bring to imperfect realities. Gratitude, presence, stillness, these are not just ideas, they are practices. And each moment you choose them, you invite joy back in. Not loud joy, Not the kind that comes with applause, but a quiet contentment. The kind that sits beside you in the morning light and whispers, "You do not need to prove anything today. You are allowed to be here as you are." Happiness in the deepest sense is not a destination. It is a way of walking. It is a decision to see the sacred in the ordinary, the divine in the daily, the gift in this breath right now. And once you begin to see that, the chase ends. You no longer live for the next big thing. You begin to live this moment fully. You begin to remember that joy was never far. It was only waiting for you to slow down, look around, and return. And then, when you have walked far enough, long enough, deep enough, you begin to realize something, that mastering yourself is not about controlling everything. It is about listening, about understanding, about returning. Returning to what? To the part of you that has always been there, beneath the noise, to the breath you forgot to feel, to the rhythm that does not come from the world's tempo but from your soul's quiet pulse. You do not need to hold everything together. You do not need to always have the answer. You do not need to be strong every moment of the day. You just need to come back to what is still true, to what is still whole, to what is still yours, even after everything else has shifted. Sometimes we think control is strength, but real strength is surrender, not giving up, but letting go of the illusion that you are meant to carry it all. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be real, to be present, to be available to the grace that shows up when you least expect it. A man once said, "I spent years trying to master life, but the day I stopped trying to control everything was the day I actually began to live." Mastery is not about never struggling. It is about knowing how to return to your breath, to your values, to your peace. Every time you choose presence over panic, you reclaim a piece of your power. Every time you choose rest over rushing, you remember who you are. And slowly, you begin to build a life not from force, but from faith, not from fear, but from quiet knowing, not from chasing, but from coming home. You begin to see that peace is not something you find. It is something you allow. It is what has always been waiting when you stop running. So if you are here now, still listening, still breathing, still holding on to something deep and quiet and true, let this be your reminder. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are returning. And that, my friend, is the beginning of everything. Maybe what you needed was never more effort, more pressure, more doing. Maybe what you needed was a pause, a gentle turning inward, a moment to remember the sound of your own soul. You do not need to perform to be worthy. You do not need to prove anything to be enough. You never did. Somewhere along the way, the world convinced you that you had to earn love, earn rest, earn your place. But grace does not work that way. Grace waits for you in the stillness, in the breath between doing, in the quiet when everything else fades. So let this be your permission to stop trying so hard to become something, and instead, to return to who you were before the world told you to be someone else, to the voice inside that speaks in kindness, not in judgment, to the presence that was always yours, even in your lowest moment. You are not here by accident. You are not listening to this by coincidence. Something in you was ready for this message. So breathe, let go, come back. And when you do, you will remember. You never had to become anything to be enough. You only had to remember you already were.